I just schedule my stream for now, because there's two ways to start a streaming in YouTube, and one of them is by scheduling, and the other is by just starting it right away. And it seems scheduling it is always the best way for some reason. I also am turning monetization on, because there also seems to be some correlation to the amount of impressions you're given, how much of a chance. I might be just speculating here, but I'm looking for the correlations between whether you monetize a stream and stuff like that. So right now I am at the end of a interesting work session. I promised colorful, so already here it is, colorful. I'm getting a directory in order for a push. So if I do a git status, you'll see all the files that I have recently worked on and have created new ones ready for release. The Chrome automation I was talking about earlier, it's really interesting. I'm going to show that. The renaming of the Links API file that you might have seen me working on to 10 underscore. So there's actually kind of a flow that I've created going on here. From an introduction file 00 to a touching the API, and some really great documentation I've now built in, fully documenting. That's not real credentials, it's just to show what it looks like, but fully documenting each step, getting your credentials off of the drive, configuring variables, and talking about endpoints, and actually hitting the API, right? Having your first little success here, listing out the sub endpoints and how we can give them human-friendly names and descriptions, and kind of zip all of that together and make a sample request for each of those endpoints. And now with all that, we have it kind of fully documented. Here's an endpoint, here's a description of the endpoint, and here's an example request that gets sent to the endpoint. And so this is kind of like a little bit of auto documentation build on all of that. And then I talk about writing a function that hits the API, why it takes two parameters and what they are. And then conditionally hitting the API, it actually walks through. And this is a pretty big block, because there's some interesting stuff about using a lightweight database as a local cache, so that you only have to hit each API once. And once you've collected the data, you've collected the data. And then we show it. We show the now local, now stored in a database, collected data, and the output of each one of those API requests. So that, I believe, is a really wonderful introduction to the MOZ Links API. And that comes right after the introduction. So if all goes well tonight, maybe on this stream, I will implement something that will automate one of these. Like, we call it automation, like here's Chrome automation, but that's not real 24/7 automation. That's not running when you're not sitting there. You have to kind of hit the button in Jupyter. But it doesn't have to be that way, because all these automations can be moved to headless Linux servers, be it a Raspberry Pi, be it a cloud server, be it a dedicated old laptop or tower you have, from stuff from the late 90s might even work here. But generally early 2000s is about where you want to start. It doesn't take much. You're not doing machine learning on this stuff. If you just want a scheduled thing that does some SEO or data science tasks for you on an ongoing basis, hits Twitter, whatever, you can just automated stuff. You can just throw up a server anywhere. It doesn't take a lot of power. And the cloud is kind of the trend these days, but it doesn't have to be. This is an example of the type of stuff you can do when you're not using the cloud. Chrome automation is not easy when you're not using the like this kind of stuff. Now I'm starting to record a session. Now it doesn't have my login, and I'm going to have to tend to that. But you can see I started running Chrome from inside a Jupyter Notebook. And I could start recording my Chrome actions. And I could say, oh, well, hit YMOZ and drill down on something. But I guess I'll get into like the free product, free SEO tools, Link Explorer. So I guess you have to be logged in to see them, but you see the stuff recording. So those clicks that I just did have been inserted here. And I don't know why it has a 1 in front of the page when it got created. It might have been some context from me recently running it. But now you can just close out of the browser, and you can put whatever you've recorded right there. I might try and outdent this a little bit if that's possible, so that you don't have to deal with that extra insert on the paste. But I do that one extra insert. I get rid of those ones that it put in there. And here is the Chrome browser again, popping up and replaying those links that I had just used in the order that I did them, except maybe not, because I have it going into CodeGen still. So when you want that to not go into CodeGen and play back the way you recorded it, you have to edit that one line out. Oh, all right, let's see what's going on. Oh, that probably enabled was never awaited. Okay, so this might just be restarting the kernel because there were open loops. No, I am incorrect. What am I doing too quickly? Yeah, that's too quick. It's timing for sure. So I am going to take one of those async. I think it's sleeps. I usually have them floating around here. I'm going to go out to my practice directory. Where's most of this coming from? These two directories. So here's my practice directory, and I'm going to have a generic browser automation thing here, and that is chock full of examples, which will almost always include a example of sleep. So that's what I wanted. And I go back to the Chrome automation, and instead of jumping right into closing the browser, which causes the error because it's gone too soon for whatever I think, I'm not entirely sure, I'll make it stay up for 5 seconds before it closes. Let's see what that does. Yeah, still an error going on back there. Locator click was never awaited. Oh, I just don't have the awaits. Oh, I didn't have the recorder in the correct mode. I didn't have the recorder in async mode, so I needed to switch a little doohickey on the context on the CodeGen program that pops up when I just, but there's the clicks replaying. So I just recorded and played back a little bit of browser automation. And if you wanted to refine it, now I got it down. You just take that out. And now that pause is CodeGen. Who'd have thought it, right? And it can remember your login context. I think I deleted the directory where that was occurring. So I'm not going to show you the logged in activity here because I don't really have much. The point is that I have recording and playback so well done, and that reopened, I think, again, because of this whole pause thing. So edit this. I need to give documentation to edit this line in or out for CodeGen. Edit this line in for CodeGen. And then this has to be more clear. This looks like that feels like that should be a begin. Something like that, right? That looks like where the automation instructions begin and end here, assuming you're recycling the same browser through the whole thing. There's different ways to play it. I guess I'll say begin, you know, CodeGen record CodeGen entries, because you might edit them. CodeGen lines. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and CodeGen lines. Because you're copying lines from CodeGen. I just want to be very explicit so that people know what to expect and what they're expected to do. So I'll leave a few of those lines in there, but I will edit this line in for CodeGen and out for automation. That's a nice long running line that'll definitely draw your attention to it. And I guess a space above that is what the eye needs to really feel what's going on here. And this was a really big accomplishment because this whole try except here and this context of it running inside an async function with this other thing going on up there allows this to work equally well in Jupyter here, which is where it just ran. Now watch this. This is the amazing thing. I'm going to select all. Oh, it's rerunning. Okay, yeah, that's because of that whole. Okay, but I'm going to select all, copy, and I'm going to go over to a command line. And I am going to, I'm in that directory, right? Unless it's the app, I'm going to vim test.py. Insert. Oh, abort. I must have been editing a temp file, so remove .test. No? Vim, I'll call it test2.py. Insert, paste. That's exactly what I copied out of the notebook, right? That's exactly what I copied out of the notebook. I write and save, and then I do Python test2.py. Up pops Chrome automation. So I can just turn this headless, you see, and I can move it onto a 24/7 server. You know, you wouldn't necessarily, and that's the popping up twice. It has the exact same behavior from the command line as it has from the notebook, which is the amazing and important thing here. So where headless equals false, I could change that to headless equals true. And I can go down here and, you know, I'll edit out the CodeGen because that really is annoying with all that closing stuff. This way a browser will just appear not for 5 seconds. And then the command line should come back. Python test2.py. It takes a few moments. The browser is invisibly loading in the background and invisibly surfing around a little bit and then exiting and coming back. Well, in that browser session, I could have done a screen snapshot. I could have done a Google search, whatever. I could have saved the view source. I could have saved the whole DOM object, everything that went into building the browser. I could even have gone out and crawled the resources and created a zipped archive of it all if I ever wanted to reproduce it 100%. But Yeah, I'm just doing very little. But that very little is the perfect template now. The reason I share you in is because this MOZ repo I'm making and I'm about to release in its current form is something that people can actually follow along with now. If you're new to this and you're on Windows, now on Mac, the Mac stuff is coming up soon, but you can just run the drink me script. It'll give you this whole Linux-based Jupyter Lab environment. It'll install all the requirements like the Linux version of Chrome. Make sure that all those details having to do with like having Linux graphics working on your Windows system are taken care of pretty well. Where they're not taken care of well, I defer to Microsoft. Microsoft is putting so much might and resources into this that I can do no better than to tell you, if you're doing this for yourself and you follow my drink me link, mikelev.in/drinkme, that this file that comes up here that has the instructions and everything is telling you first install Ubuntu 20.04 at the Windows Store, right? So anything that's hard to do on your system, Microsoft and the Windows Store, the financially incentivized, highly quality assured, thing from Microsoft will make sure Linux is on your system correctly. And then you save and run this .bat file. And then you'll have Jupyter Lab served up on localhost 8888, and you'll be able to use it just like I do. Oh, that was anticlimactic. Just like I do. Right down to the browser automation. That's an important thing here. So these go in a certain order, right? The introduction is just Markdown. That will work on anybody's machine. The Links API has no operating system weirdness. It has nothing that can break really in the way of file paths or anything. Very little operating system dependency, very little operating system fragility. Even API work is pretty much cross-platform easy. Go from native Windows to native Mac to native Linux, and this code's going to be pretty much the same. Now, when you get into browser automation, you cannot say the same thing. So easy, also quite easy, but more technical, and maybe a little bit less easy because look at these paths. You need to know where things are. If you want to control conditions, you control what things are named and where they are, right down to the user named Ubuntu. When I install Linux with a drink me script, I keep a default user named Ubuntu so that apps that you can build up around this, using that Linux as the virtual machine host for all your portable cross-platform code, will just always work. This is not to a place on, your machine in general. This is a path to a place on Linux machines in general. Not yours, all machines. So many example scripts out there use the default Ubuntu user. I think maybe even Microsoft sets it up that way. I forget, but or LXD does. It's a pretty strong convention to have a default user named Ubuntu when you're using the Ubuntu operating system. So I lean into that. I lean into the strengths of these different platforms. I'm leaning into the defaults as very much as I can. With a few exceptions, I'm actually using Chrome instead of Chromium. It says Chromium here, but I do a number of things to switch it to actually be Chrome. There's this channel equals Chrome. And then there is also this Chrome exe here, which is a reference or pointing to the actual Chrome exe file, where it is on most Linux operating systems after a Chrome install, user bin Google-Chrome. So this runs pretty much the same way across all hardware platforms, and so importantly, across I guess what I'm trying to say is that browser trick right there is cross-platform. That's just unheard of out here in, easy peasy automation land, right? I challenge someone to do much the same here under VS Code. You have to understand that Chrome that's popping up is running in Linux mode, and I can actually make it headless by just throwing a value here from false to true, and then that very code can be copy pasted onto a headless Linux server. It could be any piece of generic hardware that you can install Linux on, that which has a network connection. That can be they're servers, but they're not serving people out there on the internet at large. It can be behind your firewall at home. No one can reach it but you, and you don't really even need to reach it because it's running a scheduled thing and delivering whatever it's producing by emailing it to you or whatever. So I'm trying to make the easiest kind of on-ramp as I can for this kind of work with a little introduction. This is MOZ, this is Jupyter Notebooks, this is MOZ Jupyter Notebooks. And what to do? Well, running cells, reading docs, and racing ahead. And then some advanced topics, and that's where I'm sort of getting up to. That's the advanced topic stuff. And you see that I have ChatGPT. Sometimes I use just plain old ChatGPT as well. Not as often as I use Bing and Bard. It's all about Bing and Bard now. However, this topic now, this is an interesting topic. Explain how there are many ways to run notebooks. There are many different kinds of notebook hosts. Explain how there are many different ways to run Jupyter Notebooks. Explain web or cloud hosts like Google, Colab, Binder, Microsoft Azure, or I guess they call that Azure Notebook. I forget if it's plural. I'm not sure. I've heard it both ways. Let's see. Kaggle and others can run the code, can run most of the common code you might need to, but then also explain how the examples here are uncommon code in which Microsoft Playwright, Chrome automation, Chrome browser, Chrome web browser, give it full context, automation is occurring. And how this and other similar techniques are best accomplished with full control over a generic Linux system. I guess that's it, right? Let it explain why there's so much tricky mental stuff going on here. More control over the system. In these cases, running the code on a generic Linux system can be the best approach, as it provides full control over the system and allows for easier installation and configuration of the necessary dependencies. Yeah. Yeah, requirements being run, simple examples, cloud. Yeah. Yep. All right. I'll go with that. That's the text under the advanced topics. I might give some additional subheads to make it clear, but that is the basic thoughts. Oh, yeah, I don't need a new cell for that. I am just putting that down here. Yeah, for now, cloud or not cloud. Lots of cloud hosts. Difficult tricks. They're difficult tricks. Yeah, I don't even know what to say there. Local, as necessary. If it's not necessary to run it through my drink me, approach that gives you a local Linux and does all the nuanced setup, run as necessary. So if it's not necessary for what you're trying to do, run it in the cloud. It's easier. But if you're trying to do one of the browser automation tricks that I'm going to be doing quite a lot with, because it's going to be kind of my way of exploring the product, anything worth doing at all through a web browser, moving your hands around, is worth codifying it and turning every web app, every web site into a web app, into a API, because you can send requests to it as a text. You can on a command line. It's like, send this question to the MOZ site for this service, just like the way all these endpoints and stuff work. It's almost the same thing. I'm going to be making it similar in concept, so that a lot of the functions that you can just call easily here with MOZ endpoint and a request will also be able to work against websites. That's a great way to use the browser automation, so that you get certain very atomic, reliable things that you do on a web site down into a command line command, and then you can pipe those together. You can string those together. It doesn't matter that browsers are coming into existence and disappearing in the background. It might not be the fastest thing in the world, but it'll be awesome. And it'll, be as you, because of your login and stuff. That's a part of the beauty of all this. Whew, okay. Let's see if anyone's even there. I'm talking to myself, I bet. Someone's there. All right. I'm kind of wrapping up. I don't have much more to talk about. I do the final push. It's really awesome. It's getting real close to get status of releasing this to the world. I'll do one more notebook cleaning. That session was recreated, so that is definitely where the session is being held, and not where I was thinking it was being held, which was this auth.json. That can't be released. No. Whew. I hope that's not in the repo. I don't think so. Think it through. Git remove assets auth.json. Oh. All right. Okay. Now, I think it was as if that was never even in there because I haven't done a real commit and push for a while. So having removed it and forced the removal, I think that's good. Now I do want to do avoid that in the future. I don't want ever any JSON files from getting into a repo. So I'm going to do vim.getIgnore, and I'm going to make it ignore all JSON files. So it's ignoring all database files, all pickle files, and all JSON files. So now git status. All right, that's good. Git commit. Good examples. Git push. All right, let me go make sure that there was never a credentials file out there on GitHub. And that repo is MOZ. It's certainly not showing here. Oh, some of the benefits here is, remember I was showing you that whole Links API. Look how nice it looks right here on GitHub. So this is why this is not VS Code, right? So I can just take this link and send it to people, and they can read all about the MOZ API here, and then they could even just copy and paste these things, and then they could click here and see the official documentation. They can pull down my thing, and they have to make their credentials file. Yeah, speaking of credential files, what I want to do is I guess look at the history. So 18 commits. Oh, I guess this must be Time Traveler. But it doesn't have a breakout of the files. But it wouldn't have been one of the 4 days ago. It would have been either just yesterday or this one. And there aren't that many, so I should be able to just look at those. Yeah, that was the removal of Roger the robot. And just stuff in there. And that only leaves this one here. Yep, I did this correctly. Good, good. All right. That's a pretty big update, right? This I actually added a lot of documentation. It's a lot of documentation. That's all added since, and also the browser automation piece. So there is quite a lot that I just pushed out, and it really sets the stage for wonderful things because browser automation is so much easier when you are able to just stop it and make a interactive object explorer, you know, that records your motions on the browser. I mean, it's wonderful. It's almost best case scenario. I'm sure VS Code does it better. They have some testing suite integration plugin thing that does everything I'm showing here 100 times better, but they are not doing it in Linux, such that you are also making your 24/7 automations. Because next step, NBDev. Oh, but I've streamed enough for now. It's about 7:30, and but this so sets the stage for NBDev. Maybe I'll do a little bit of the journaling stuff that people sometimes tune in for. Obviously not tonight, but yeah, I'm just so losing steam. Next step, NBDev. Both a Links API and Chrome automation example. Maybe a SERPs example. I mean, you know, I don't want to show you how to do everything that you know, my employer does, but you could never do it at scale or anywhere similar as what the companies that do this, you know, professionally do. But you can always grab a SERP result, you know, with the same web scraping techniques as I'm using here, and use that in some way that, you know, you get a lot of leverage out of very little effort. But most of the time I'm going to be connecting to the MOZ products on that kind of stuff, so you can do it at scale. So you don't have to find other solutions, which you would also have to pay for ultimately when you're scraping at scale. And yeah, we'll do screen snapshots of Bing and Bard and all that happy stuff. So I wrap up here. Thanks for joining me, and hope to see you all again soon. And don't forget to subscribe.